Senator Kennedy will be right back. So we have a little bit of an ambitious agenda today. I want to move through as much of this as we can. Representative Hawkins is back with a committee sub with just one very slight change on House Bill 434. I'm going to let him explain that. We've already had opportunity for testimony and discussion on this one, so I'd like to let's just decide which way we're going to go with it. You all may have noticed we've had quite a few bills in here this session about licensing of different professions, trades, et cetera. And apparently the study committee over the summer was very active in that. And you notice Senator Walker has a series of bills and had a lot of interest in that. So I'm real happy to see Gabe Sterling is with us today from the Secretary of State's office. I thought it might be beneficial to all of us once we'll get to you next, Gabe. Once we get through with this bill, let him kind of update us on exactly what the Secretary of State's role is in licensing, how many different trades and professions, et cetera, they license, how that process is coming along, et cetera, in case we have questions. I know there were a lot of physical therapists here today, and a couple of them had asked to speak, and I'm not sure exactly what their concerns or interest. I hadn't seen a physical therapy bill yet, but there could be one coming. So I thought we'd spend a little time getting educated on that entire licensing process. And then I promised Senator Huffstetler, Senate Bill 163, the craft beer distribution bill, to have a hearing on that. My recollection is we did last year, and the bill had a pretty thorough hearing. So I'm hoping we don't have to hear from everybody all over again. He has made some changes and had a committee sub presented to me yesterday that pares the bill down significantly from the version we considered last year. In our folders, we have a copy of the Senate Research Office's summary of the bill, laying it out, and a copy of the committee sub on that. So we'll let him explain those changes, and we'll see if we can move on that. Unfortunately, with the funerals and all this week, we had Chairman Smith's funeral yesterday that knocked us out a day. And then there's a state trooper funeral on Friday. We were getting really compressed on the number of meetings we can have this week. Part of that is because this is the week for our appropriations subcommittees to meet in the Senate on the supplemental budget. And so that is gobbling up a lot of people and making it impossible to get quorums and meetings on the next couple of days. So this will be our only meeting this week. We'll be back full swing next week on Tuesday and Thursday, and we'll all blow off a little steam tomorrow night at our committee dinner. Look forward to seeing all of you there at the 57th Fighter Group at 6:30. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Chairman Hawkins, if you will quickly run through the changes to your bill, just refresh us what it is so we can get up to speed.
I will do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not take much of your time. I know you have a long day. The bill that you have for the substitute is a reformat of the bill at the request of the Medical Composite Board. So it is in line with the other different specialties and groups. We did add some words to the bill. On line 99, we put direct in front of supervision to tighten it up even more. And then in the same wording on line 210, direct before supervision. That way there's no question about how this is going to operate. That's the bill.
That's not your page. Hang on one second.
Okay.
All right, just to make sure all the committee knows where we are, in your folder, you will see the pink version of this bill. That's as it passed the House. LC 339631S is the committee substitute here.
Right.
On our
Yes.
side,
I'm
and
sorry.
it's really implemented those changes that you've mentioned. So
Yeah.
you've essentially tightened it up to where they must be under the direct supervision of the radiologist.
Exactly.
To do it.
Right.
All right. Are there questions for the author? All right. What's the pleasure of the committee? Got a motion do pass by Senator Albers and a second from Senator Summers. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, you have passed out unanimously. You will need to tell us who you would like to carry this for you in the Senate. Assuming you can get it out of rules.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that.
Important.
I think Senator Albers, if he would and could, that'd be great. Thank you. I
All right,
appreciate
we'll
that.
sign him up. That's an important note.
Yeah.
All right,
you're
thank you so much
you.
for being here. Can my technology people get Gabe live so Sterling, able to talk? Hey, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know you're out of town today, but it would be helpful if you could just kind of give us a brief overview of the whole licensing process and Secretary of State operations there, what you guys do. I don't need the 1 hour version, but just kind of an overview.
Well, I got a 3-hour version and maybe a 5-minute version. We'll see you get somewhere in there. Essentially, the way that it works is all the boards are established by law and they issue the license and they do complaints and compliance. So we do the administrative side of making all that work. We hire the analysts, we hire the executive directors. Also joining me today is the deputy director, Wanda Jaffe, who is in the weeds every day dealing with this. And essentially our budget has been the same pretty much since 2016-ish. It's about $8.5 million every year. And just for comparison's sake, we bring in about $24 million every year. And out of the gate, I'm going to say we're underfunded for the amount of stuff we have to do. We have seen a large increase in both the population and the number of licenses we have to do. And when we have growth, and it's great to be the #1 state in America for business, we have lots of locations that have to be inspected under the law. We have lots of things we have to do. And one of the things we have learned, we are going through a process right now, changing from our old software system, which was the EMLO system. It's literally 22 years old. And I know Senator Albers is my technology guy over there, and he knows a 22-year-old system, that is old as dirt. I mean, it's bubble gum and baling wire holding it together right now, keeping it going. So we've decided, and the legislature helped us out by readjusting some bond money we had. We came in under budget on the new election system, so we had leftover bond money. Part of that was redirected to the voter registration system, and another, I can't remember the exact, I think around $4 million or so, 3.8 million was sent over to do this new system. It's called GOLS, the Georgia Online Application Licensing System. And I'll give credit where credit is due. Ms. Jaffe came up with that name. So I still owe her a gift card to a good restaurant down there for that. But we literally we're approaching 600,000 licensees. And we have had, our head count remains pretty low for the amount of work we have to do. Now, as with any new system, in the GOLS system, which we launched in October, we're doing it in 3 tranches. And this was one because we can't have any of our 7 groups we have. There's 7 different trades that we have, an executive director and then a group of analysts beneath them to basically push these things through. And one of the issues we saw in our review that we did in 2021 was that the average application and renewal was having 6 touch points between the analyst and the applicant or licensee. And that's the ones that were documented. So if there's a quick phone call, sometimes they won't get documented. So it's even more than that. So it was a very inefficient process. So we worked with a company called MTX under a state contract and Salesforce under an existing state contract to build out this system. And we rolled it out in October. And as with anything, we tested it for thousands of hours, and there were issues once real licensees, real analysts, when they're doing the work. And we discovered some of this. It is for the most part worked the way we intended. Now, there were some issues, especially early on with the physical therapists, which is why I assume so many of them are there. We extended some of the deadlines for this. And let's give you some numbers about how many people have gone through this since we launched it. There have been 38,098 external logins, 2,822 new licenses issued through the system, 15,057 licenses renewed through the system, and $1,921,000 in revenue that have come into the system. Now, one of the things this does to cut down on the touch points between analysts and applicants is it's developed a dashboard for every person. And they can see what they're missing, where the deficiencies are, and what they have to do. Because our intention administratively was to not have one of our analysts look at this until they had what we call the binary things up, their driver's license image, their criminal history, their thumbprints has been ordered and everything. So that's where how the system works. It's intended to basically stop everything until they get 100% of their license in. Another thing that we did, we had a lot of zombie applications out there for several years. So we changed administratively that if you don't get all your deficiencies fixed within 60 days, we consider your application administratively withdrawn. So we have a group of people who focus every day on trying to get Georgians to work. The volume of people we have to get through with those people is very, very high. And we have biannual renewal periods. And one of the things on physical therapists is we saw there was an issue early on with verification. So we changed that system. And we have been in constant contact with them really since December, every single day with their association and their lobbyists. So to put this in perspective, they had 11,825 people who could renew. On average, 3 to 5% don't renew. They leave the industry, they leave the state, they pass away. So that's 3 to 5%. And normally about 10 to 12% renew late. Right now, we're at 10,128 have already renewed. So we're actually ahead of the historical timelines on people getting renewed. Are there one-offs? Absolutely. And one of the things we discovered is some people signed up when they did their first applications with their school email, which, after a year or so, you no longer have access to. So we're having problems with that. And we have multiple people with multiple emails. The way we've designed the system is you have one kind of the parent email, you can have children emails underneath it, and one record. And one of the things we changed is some organizations liked having one email for hundreds of people, and that was not secure. It did not allow for individual verification. So we're trying to improve the systems and improve security on the systems while we build it out. So I know some people have had some issues on that, but we've literally had thousands and tens of thousands now of people able to renew. And we just reopened on January 19th, 3 other license groups: occupational therapists, master cosmetologists, and funeral services. And they are at 9% of occupational therapists have already renewed. About 2,228 Cosmos have already renewed, and 7% of funeral services renewed, and they have until April 30th. So they literally have another 85 days. So we're working through some of these things, because one of the things we're having to do is there was a build out issue in the original MTX implementation. We had told them to allow multiple licenses under a single email. It wasn't built exactly that way to start. So now we're having to manually merge. We're going through about 3,000 a day that I know Wanda is ready to, pull her hair out having to do. And Wanda, can you kind of walk through what our staff is having to do to kind of get these things prepared so people can verify and get onto their renewals?
What kind of backlog you think you have now? Do you have any idea how many?
Well, it's not really a backlog, because right now, literally on physical therapists, there are 10 that are on hold and 7 are for dry needling out of the 10,000. Not 10, there's 10 on hold. So this system doesn't really have backlogs. It's just a question of them getting into the system for the first time and verifying. And that's what we're trying to
wondering how long it takes a person if they, apply to be licensed, how long it takes them to get their license. Is there an average, or do you know?
Well, I'll let Wanda talk specifically on this one, because we have different things for different trades. Some trades, one of the things we discovered, and one of the things in working with Chairman Walker on his study committee and our Georgia Works Commission, was we've got 100 years of licensing laws and 50 years of rules, and they all say to do different things. So it's hard to standardize across all these things. And one of the things that we discovered that's a real difficult thing to manage is boards meeting and having quorums, and then trying to get through what is sometimes subjective criteria that's kind of up to the board to interpret. We can't tell people ahead of time what this means. As an example, in contracting, there's an argument about what does supervisory mean? What is vertical construction? Does vertical construction count if it's 2 stories underground as well as 1 story on top of the ground? I mean, those kind of subjective delays get in the way. There was one particular trade that they couldn't get a quorum for a couple of meetings. So there were people who had literally graduated from school and had job offers, but the board didn't meet. They couldn't issue the license. So that's one of the things where I think there's going to be a bill coming out of the House to allow us to administratively get the licenses out and let the boards focus on complaints and compliance, so we can get people to work faster. Having to wait sometimes for the boards is a problem. But even then, we still have some backlogs, because the workload is just gigantic for the handful of people that we have. Like I said, we have an $8.5 million budget. It's been an $8.5 million budget for 8 years at a minimum. And the number of people have grown, number of licenses have grown, number of trades we cover has grown. And it's just we are as efficient as we can be, but I want to be efficient and effective. And frankly, we don't have enough cash with enough bodies to push these things through.
How
So
much you need?
if we trade, we
How
can give you
much
the
cash
basic
you
on all those answers. So we can give you a list, a spreadsheet showing the average days on everything.
Why don't you give me a
If you
price
sign
tag?
up right now
Money do you
for
need?
renewal, I'm sorry, it could take like a half an hour if you have everything in place.
Okay, I'm just wondering how much money you need. There's pretty good financial status for the state. What do you want us to appropriate for you this year to get you on top of this?
Um,
I'm dead
we
serious.
try to be realistic in what we thought we could actually get, and that's been our requests. Chairman Powell in another hearing about a month ago asked specifically of us and went through the appropriations committee, say, how much do you need to really be at a full enough strength? And we came up with one that was an additional staffing ask of about $2.8 million, which would essentially allow us to have one more level 3, one more level 2, and 2 to 3 level 1 analysts in each of the 7 trades. And that would give us a lot more workability. That's a lot. Big
The bill that we just passed, you may not have looked at it, but it really delegates to the Georgia Composite Medical Board the rulemaking, the criteria for licensure and renewal. It's almost as if these different trades, I'm going to call them, or organizations that you're licensing, the nitty gritty or the details are being established by the organizations themselves. You're just processing the applications?
Essentially, yes, that's how it works. And the problem is it's varied. I mean, there's no uniformity across on the rules on these things, and which is a good thing on some parts, but bad on the other. And one of the things we have to take into account now is, in talking to the governor's office, we're going to work with these boards because there was a Supreme Court case last year on the lactation consultants that basically said we couldn't license them because there's no health and safety angle on that. So one of the things that was adopted by the Georgia Works Commission was said, if you don't have a health, safety, or financial protection rationale behind a rule or even an existing license, we have to rethink those rules and even doing some of those licensings. I think there's a bill right now that might have passed out to no longer license librarians, which, by the way, we license librarians for some reason.
Okay. Tell you what we're going to do. I've got about 6 people signed up to speak, and I'm going to, a lot of these are from the physical therapists. I'm hoping they don't all insist on saying the same thing, but I'm going to call a few, let them talk. And then if you'll hang with us, and Wendy, we might let you reply to any particular concerns. Do you have a question, Madam Leader? Okay. Kay Kendrick, Cosmetology Board. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Kay Kendrick. I've been here before. I chair the Cosmetology and Barber Board, and not to dispute anything that Gabriel said, because I agree with most of what he did say. But I want to give you a little background on the Cosmetology Board. Our licensing is over 90,000 licenses that we govern, and that includes the salons, the businesses, the professionals, and schools. We have right now, our largest renewal is our cosmetology, and there are 50,902 that have to renew, and normally we renew by the end of March. We did extend it out till April, but the big problem with that is so many of these people are not on our email list. So many of them don't understand why they can't get into the system to renew their licenses. They're calling me, they're calling the state board, they're calling you guys, they're calling everybody because they can't understand. And I don't even understand. In 4 days, I got 5 PIN numbers, and none of them worked. And I understand what Gabe's saying. I understand the system process. My husband did that for 45 years. He managed a large IT department. And I know there is a whole different thought process in the IT programmers versus what we, the users, use. And so that creates a mental block for us. But I want to tell you about our department. We process on an average every month 1,000 applications. During renewal, like I said, we have over 50,000 to process. We have 4 full-time people, and we have 2 full-time temps to process all of those applications. We are on a backlog right now of about 1,300 applications, not renewals, but these are applications that came in that we have not been able to process because of the system and the way it's working. And we estimate right now we're at 2 to 3 months for us to process applications that we used to could do in 2 weeks to a month.
When you're saying we, do you mean?
Talking about the staff of the cosmetology board, yes, sir.
So that's not Gabe's fault at all.
No, we're under Gabe's, we're under the Secretary of State, but we have our own staff down there and they process all of our applications.
All right.
And this is how many they process. Okay, we normally process our applications within 2 to 4 weeks. We were real proud of having them down to about 7 days to get them processed and turned around and back out and get people working. And that has changed. So we have to find a solution to why these people can't understand why they can't get into this system. They can't understand why they can't get their licenses. I did speak to the Secretary of State and I asked, could we allocate money to send out a paper mail out to all the licensees and at least explain to them that they're not going to be penalized for not having their license renewed on time. They're not going to be fined if an inspector comes in for having an expired license, and that we're going to work through this system and they're going to be okay. They don't understand that, so they're freaking out because it is a fine. He said he would look into that, so I don't know where that's at. But I want to tell you about how the revenue that we bring in, and when you talk about allocating more money back, the Cosmetology Board is one of the largest under the Secretary of State's office. We have the most number of licensees. On an even year, we have a revenue of $4.5 to $5 million that we bring in under our board alone. That's predominantly the cosmetology renewals and all. On an odd year, we have, excuse me, let me reverse that. On an odd year, it's 3 million a year. That's an average of 250,000 a month. On an even year with cosmetology renewals, it's 5.5 to 5 million. Is what we bring in. We feel like that we should be able to request more money to put back into the cosmetology board to renew these licenses and to process them in a faster manner.
Where's that 5 million go?
All of our money goes to the general fund. That's what I've been told. It all goes to the general fund and then we're allocated by appropriations as to how much money we can operate with. But we also have the inspectors and the rest of the staff in our field.
What's your budget for processing these applications? Do you have
I don't have that figure, but I'm sure Gabe can tell you. But I can tell you that I stood in this room about 2 weeks ago and spoke.
scared us to death? We'll never forget it.
Well, I was a little insulted. We were referred to as the lowest hanging fruit on the tree. And I'm not sure where that comes from and why it is considered, I mean, to me, it's an insult. But I'm telling you that if we're the lowest fruit and we bring in this kind of revenue, I think we're pretty important.
Have you seen Larry Walker since then? He was in the well today. His hair, he looks like he's one of the Beatles or something. He's scared to go back to a beauty.
I started off from haircut.
Yeah, or else he can't get anybody to cut his hair now.
Yeah. We didn't spread the word, I can tell you that. But I just feel like, we are an important industry and we are growing. When the economy goes down and businesses go out, cosmetology and barbering is one of the first industries that start to increase. People go back to school and we get more in this industry. We bring in a lot of revenue. And I think that you asked what we needed, but I think there needs to be a reasonable amount of money that can be allocated back to this board so that we can actually function. We need more processors. But one of the biggest things we need is a switchboard operator change, because when calls come into that board and it's all the boards are answering about the same time, people can't get calls back. People can't get to us. They sit online and hold for long periods of time. I have sat online and held for 45 minutes or more. They get tired. They hang the phone up. So we just need some help.
I didn't
Thank
mean
you.
to cut you off, but we gotta.
I appreciate it. That's all I had to say.
You did well. Thank you. All right, Darius Shaw. Hey, do any of y'all want to do rock, scissors, paper between Stephen Clark and Vassy and Amy Keating and Megan Lang, so we don't have to hear all of you? We'll kind of talk them. You give me a couple more just when we get the feel for it. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Dara Shah and I'm the president of APTA Georgia. To be quite honest, I'd rather you hear from them and hear their testimony. So if you can hear 2 or 3 of them versus hearing me talk, I would appreciate that. So
Got it.
let's just go ahead and get them
All
started.
right, thank you. Who's next then? Stephen Clark, or we got somebody else want to volunteer? Nathan Vassy.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you.
Stephen Clark, physical therapist from Noonan, Georgia. Wanted to provide my testimony. Good to see you, Matt. Yeah. Tell you a little bit about my experience renewing my application this year. I've been a physical therapist for 11 years in the state of Georgia and have not had problems renewing my application or renewing my license in the past. In the past year, I'm on a national product that provides telehealth services across the country. I'm currently licensed in 12 other states and have 16 additional compact states that are tied to my state license. In my renewal, I have had difficulty getting in touch with the board. I've had difficulty with the renewal going through. First was told it was a dry needling hold. Then it was a glitch within the system hold. Thankfully, that was resolved today. Every single time that I've gotten towards the end of a deadline, I have 16 other states that are pending based on that hold. In 16 other states, I've had to tell a patient that I might not be able to care for them next week. Telehealth overcomes a lot of barriers and access problems, and those have been intensified by not being able to provide services to those patients, which then creates a backlog in an already difficult to manage system.
Hey, when you mention, your frustrations, are you mad like at Ms. Shaw, who's the president, not doing her
No, I
job,
can't
or
say
sec-
enough kind things about Ms. Shaw. She has led our association flawlessly, provided continuous updates to us. I will say that in the past month, I have renewed 4 other state licenses that were renewed within minutes. So I've
Okay.
got extensive experiences across the United States. I have experience with all 51 jurisdictions within the United States.
When you renew, where do you submit your renewal application to your organization or to the Secretary of
That
State?
goes to the goals system that they were speaking of. I have
Okay.
some additional insight in that the product that we've launched as a part of my company is on a Salesforce application. I do hear the challenges that you guys are going through in launching a new system. Definitely understand the process. What I would urge would be to make sure that every single physical therapist is cared for, that you have an account for every single person that is pending, and continue to move that extension out until we are very clear of each licensee's status and where it stands.
Right. Thank you. Who do I got next?
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Lang, and I'm a physical therapist here in Atlanta, Georgia. I actually have a unique background. I applied for a reciprocal license from the state of Florida in August. So I was not applying for a renewal. I was applying for a reciprocal license. And I finally received my reciprocal license on December 4th. So that was a 3.5-month process for what I was told would take less than 30 days. In this time, I missed out on 4 to 5 paychecks. My projected start date was in September. So I was not able to start my job until the week after I received my license, my reciprocal license here in Georgia. And I think from my perspective, the biggest issue I've had with speaking with the board is communication, not only between me and the board, but between the levels of the board themselves. The goal system and the Secretary of State's office. So I was calling multiple times weekly to get background or to get updates on my system, making sure everything was submitted correctly, making sure they had visuals for everything that I did submit. And every time I was told that they had everything they needed, and it was just a waiting game now for the license analyst to be able to basically check it off the checklist and give me my license. And after that 25-day waiting period, then they finally looked at the license and told me that a file they had received from my previous employer was a defunct file and they were not able to open it, which then restarted my 25-day period.
What board are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Secretary of State and the Board of Physical Therapy, which
Sure.
I was receiving from the licensing board. Board is very generic.
Well, I just wonder if you're mad at the Board of Physical Therapy or frustrated with them, or you mad with the Secretary of State?
I'm frustrated with the Secretary of State's how I feel like I got lost in the mix, I think, of them switching over from paper applications to the goal system. When I applied, it was a paper application, and I think that I was pushed back through the system a little bit because of the switch to the goal system.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Nathan Bassett.
Yes, my name is Nathan, Chairman, and I'm here on the same thing to tell you about how frustrating this license renewal process has been, specifically with the transition to the gold system, and to reinforce Gabe Sterling's request for increased budget needs. It took me 11 weeks to renew my license, and that started back in October when I was ready with all my requirements ready and met to just submit the application. But it took me until from October till December just to get my account created in the goal system. And then once I did that, it took me another month, another several weeks after that just to get my license renewed because of an error with there. Overall, it was 30 phone calls to a phone system that wasn't taking calls often or was only calling back during business hours when I'm treating patients. And this was just taken away from patient care and time at my expense when I was ready to submit my application back when it opened in October. And thanks to Miss Wanda at the end, she figured out that it was just because of a typo in the email address that had been changed, and she had to fix that in her overtime. Renewed.
Thank you for sharing with us. Amy, Keating?
Thank you. Shorter. I also have the same problem as a physical therapist. I've been in the field as a PT assistant for many years and then a PT since 2006. Oh, I was a PT assistant before I was a PT, so I've been around a long time, since the late 90s. I have never experienced this issue before that we had. I started in early October when the PLB, Professional Licensing Board, sent out their email. I went on for weeks getting nothing done between the hang up phone calls on your voicemail, a phone call back that produced nothing, emails back. I tried to do what they told me and it didn't work. I emailed Jan Jones in mid-January to finally, because we kept pushing that date back, heard nothing. And then I found a name on Facebook, Matt Tizer and Senator Albers. Thank you. Between the two of them, I made headway and started hearing from Miss Jordan Fuchs and Miss Wanda Jaffe, and Mr. Tizer called me back. In Lieutenant Governor's office, I also had people I know reach out to them. They called me. I finally started getting things done around 1/16, 17, and 18. And on the 21st or 20th, I finally renewed my license of January. And that started mid-October.
Okay.
My beef with this is I hear you didn't want to hear from too many people.
Well, yeah, I heard from
didn't
every
make
single
me-
one of
That
y'all.
didn't make me
I didn't
very
give it away.
happy, because has your job ever hung on or been in jeopardy based on somebody holding your license at bay and you not being able to work? I provide for my family. We the people. We are taxpayers. We pay your budgets and I expect service. I provide therapy every day. Medicare reduces our reimbursements year after year. I'm sure you all know that. Anybody with health insurance knows that. We work for peanuts for our school amount of school we have.
You
I
think-
don't appreciate this, like being treated like this. Everybody here, cosmetology, it just
Well, don't
blows
get
my
mad at Our
mind.
committee, we're not the guys doing the,
I know, but
we're
I'm
just
just saying,
giving
I
you a
feel
voice here.
the way you said, who wants to split whatever you said to hear from so-and-so and so-and-so?
Well-
That rubbed me the wrong way.
I apologize for
I
that.
don't-
I'm trying to
Sorry.
make sure we get to hear another bill as well.
Thank you so much for the remarks today and hearing the physical therapist. We very much appreciate the time, the work that the Secretary of State's office has done. We understand that a lot of you have gotten phone calls from constituents. We appreciate the stewardship. We are hopeful that we can continue to work with them on a system that is functional, processing licenses a little bit faster, and we just appreciate the creativity and the problem solving with us. So
Thank you. Wanda, you got anything you'd like to add for us? You've kind of been in the line of fire here for the last few.
I have been. What I would say is that with any new system, you're going to have problems. We went from a paper society to a paperless society. So you're going to have a lot of education and a lot of false starts. Now, that's what I'll say. Like, for example, the verification piece, when it was designed based off of email. But of course, you got school emails, you've got multiple emails. You got 6 licenses that are tied to different emails. You've got old emails. We had approximately 20,000 licensees without emails. So then you go back and you say, okay, let's do social security number. Well, laws over the years, we wasn't required to obtain that information. So it's been really creative in trying to find a piece of information that goes across 41 boards and 197 license types that can make the verification piece work, not just for one board or one group of people, but for an entire organization. So that's where our biggest piece has been. The challenge, I was just talking to my executive directors this afternoon, the challenge, 75% of our challenge is the verification piece, getting people into the system. And so after that, once they're in, I keep getting responses with, oh, okay, I got it. I'm in here. I'm renewed. Thank you. Thank you. We're in here. We're good. So I am hearing the positive. I hate to say this because you're hearing the negative. I am calling applicants. My staff work tirelessly. And I just want to repeat what Gabe said. I have less than 100 people in my division. Less. So if you take out the investigators and you take out the call center, I have 7 sections with an average of 6 people per section. So that's 42 people. So when you take 42 people and you have 50,000 cosmetologists and 11,000 physical therapists, and you have used cars, used parts, and renewal, that calls for a lot of phone calls and a lot of communications with this verification piece. My staff is working overtime without asking for any supplemental pay. They are trying to process as much as they can. They are also working in 2 different systems. So, I'm trying to stabilize both systems for both. I see a lot of positive coming out of this. I do see that once we get past this hurdle, that this is going to be a better system. I've been in there renewing people, going through the process, and it is going to be a great game changer once we get stabilized and once we get everything into place. It's just getting past that original hurdle. I can only do so much testing. I do want to address one thing. I know the young lady felt like she was overlooked in the process because she started in paper. So let's take those 42 people. Who do you think did the UAT for the system?
UAT testing, by the way, it's one of those fancy IT words.
Yeah, sorry. It's a
Thank you.
user acceptance testing. The people that tested out the system was our staff. We don't have anybody else. So I took the same 42 people, and not only did I say, you have to work an 8-hour day and get your applications processed and get your renewals done, but you also need to test the system for 4 hours a day. So my staff went above and beyond, and they have been tireless in trying to provide the best service that they can. And they are very conscientious. They cannot stand to be behind the 8 ball. I get emails if they are a minute past due, that I get emails saying I need more help because we're getting a little overdue. So I really feel like the professional licensing boards has been overlooked for funding for many years. I've been with the professional licensing board for 17 years. Very little pay. My staff probably makes a half or maybe a third of what some of our licensees make. And yet they are striving their best to provide you with the best service. If I could get more staff in there, I think that would definitely be the game changer.
All right. Well, thank
Mr.
you for
Chairman.
your effort staying over to. Yes, sir, Mr. Sterling. You
On that
wrap
front,
up?
I believe in the governor's budget is $145,000 for some temporary work to help with some of this backlog. And to Miss Jackie's point, and by the way, she is dedicated. She's a lifer. 17 years. She's worked her way up from analyst to deputy director. She busts her tail every single day, as does all the staff. we are undermanned to do a really big job. And we kind of had to internally decide the old system was dying. Was going to have to be replaced. The new system, we did a lot of investigation and discovery. To Ms. Jaffe's point, it's going to be a better outcome at the end because paper is just wildly inefficient, and having everything online is going to make it better for the long run. It's getting through that verification process. And to quote my former CIO, if security is not a little bit of a pain in the butt, it's not real security, but it's going to be this big of a pain in the butt. And we're trying to work around that. So we changed the verification system in the middle. To Ms. Paula's point, we did a lot of creative things to kind of get through this. So we started using the PIN numbers. And there was one person at the implementer who did something against protocol. I think that person's no longer with the implementer. And that caused a hiccup about 2 weeks ago. But this is the reality of rolling out a new system that has to be used. We could test it to hell and gone, but until it goes into a real world environment, we will not see some of the issues that come up. And one of the things that happened, I think one of the gentlemen said there was a typo in one of his emails, which we can't really know. And people signed up with Mary Heather Smith, and they tried to get in using Mary Smith, and the system didn't recognize them. And that was to Ms. Jaffe's point of trying to find a unique identifier that crosses everything. And this simply doesn't exist for records in some of these cases that are 30 and 40 years old, or the brand new ones that were picked up differently. So we are working through this. Any support we can get from the legislature to help us do our jobs better, to keep us as the number one place to do business, we will gladly accept. I have a quick spreadsheet that we sent over to the House budget side. I'm happy to share it with you all. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Did we get kicked out?
Looks like it.
Yeah.
We'll sign back in.
Okay.